And one of the persons that would like to challenge him in November is Karen Bowerman. Hello, Karen.
Hello. Should I say aloha?
Aloha Friday, you betcha. We like to celebrate a little Hawaii over here as a person who lived there for a long, long time, and I go there a lot. We do it every Friday. Sorry.
Sounds great.
Yeah. So you're a Kansas girl. So tell me about that. What's that mean?
Well, I was born in Kansas. I was actually born in Topeka, and then I went to undergraduate school and got my master's in Kansas as well. But then I went off to Texas A&M and became an Aggie. That's where I got my doctorate.
Oh, so you're okay. So now, when it comes to football, where does your love lie?
Well, see, I have one daughter who graduated from OSU and another who's in law school at University of Oregon. So I have to kind of play it even here.
Oh, man. I was thinking back to the Texas Aggies and all that. No, you've got a real problem then, don't you?
I do indeed.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. Well, what you do is you become what we call in Oregon a platypus.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
That's what you do. You got to please them both. You know, they're your kids. You got to do what you got to do.
Well, and after you invest all that money in both, why you kind of do need to ride that middle road on that particular topic.
No kidding. Just remember, football season. Just either you say nothing, or I would just say nothing because people are I know you haven't been here a long, long time, but you've been here probably enough to see what the Civil War is all about.
Oh, I'm well aware of that.
Yeah.
They didn't graduate just yesterday, so
okay.
You bet. In fact, our son retired from Intel, so we've seen all of that competition going on for a long time.
All right. Again, Karen Bowerman running for the 5th Congressional District, which, of course, is here in the Mid-Valley, a little bit up into West Lynn and over to the coast and so on and so forth. It's a very, very diverse, I hate using that word, but diverse district in that it's so many different kinds of groups of people. Don't you think kind of?
I really do. In fact, I think it's a good representation of the diversity, if we may again use that word, throughout Oregon. We've got the folks in the lumber industry, we've got the fishermen, we've got agriculture, we've got wineries, we've got urban areas. Salem, the very tip of Portland goes down into Lake Oswego, Dallas, Albany. So yeah, there's a little bit of everything here.
Yeah. Now, speaking of that, let's talk a little bit about your background. As you said, you graduated from a couple different. You have a doctorate. You have a master. What all do you have, and where does that apply to? I want to be a congresswoman. Woman.
Well, I was a former dean of business school in higher education, and that put me in touch with the economic indicators, and in fact, analyzing them has really been my career. I've been a business professor for over 32 years, and including that time as dean. And I just don't like the direction that these economic indicators are taking us right now. For example, in 1982, we were the number one creditor nation, and today we're the number one debtor nation. That is not good and not leaving our country in the kind of shape that we would want to hand it over to our children and grandchildren. So I'm ready to apply what I've learned about business into the governmental sector.
Now, let me. So again, that sounds to me like obviously you're fiscally conservative.
You hit it.
Okay.
No surprise there, probably. And it's along with fiscal conservative approaches, it's limited government, restoration of free enterprise. Of course, the overall economic prosperity for Oregonians is wrapped up in that, but then also a return to liberty as we know it.
Okay, Karen Bowerman's with us. Can you hang on? Let me just take care of one more little bit of business here, and then we come back and we'll have a little more time.
I look forward to it.
All right, stay right there. Karen Bowerman with us. She's running for the 5th Congressional District on the Republican side, hoping to face off against Kurt Schrader in November.
Hey, Obama, turn off the lights on the way out of the White House. This is the Bill Post Radio Show. Here's more of the Bill Post Radio Show.
All right, once again, we're talking with Karen Bowerman, who is running for the 5th Congressional District in the primary on the Republican side. So, Karen, have you been a Republican all your life? Did you see the light at some point? Were you always, how do you stand on that?
Well, at heart, I've always been a Republican. I had a period in time, though, when I've worked for two different governors, one in Kansas, one in Texas, one Republican, one Democrat. So I have had experience on both sides of the aisle. I must tell you that the Democrat did not ask me my political party, but I know that he knew.
Now, which state was that in?
That was in Texas.
Well, okay, so a Democrat in Texas...
Briscoe was the governor at that time.
Well, I was going to say, a Democrat in Texas is probably more conservative than a Republican in Oregon.
He was a rancher, and I would say that he was a fairly conservative man, and at that time it was common for the Democrat Party to be in control in Texas. Oh. That was more than a couple years ago.
Okay, a couple. All right, we'll trust you on that one. It feels good for you. But you've been married for 34 years. Your husband Earl, so he was in agriculture. Is he retired now, or still doing that?
He is retired. In fact, he retired 2004, I believe it was, and developed a produce brokering firm at that time. But he got his doctorate up in Rutgers and was reared on a dairy farm in Arkansas and studied especially tree fruits and blueberries. Huh. Just a perfect fit for right here.
That's Oregon. Yeah.
That's Oregon.
All right, so what's your take on, the federal government owns the vast majority of Oregon, basically, especially our natural resource, our most abundant natural resource, timber. If you were in Congress today, what could you do to get, or try to do, or hope to do to get that to be changed?
Yeah, that's a very important issue, and in fact, that is a part of a large plan that I have in my repertoire that would help to deal with debt deficit and even Social Security. We're a system, obviously, in government, and one topic affects another, and so that's kind of how I'm tying those three together. Oregon actually ranks, I believe, about number 4 in terms of the percentage of the state lands that are owned by the federal government, with Nevada being number 1. My goodness, somewhere around 90% of their land is owned by the government. But there's nothing sacred about that. There's no particular reason, unless you're talking about military reservation or Indian reservation, why that land needs to be owned by the feds and controlled by the feds and disallowing free enterprise on those lands. So in order to get at that, I think there is much of an openness, particularly on the West Coast, for there to be some bipartisan work together to open up those lands because of the really incredible positive impact that it would have on free enterprise. The opportunity for money to come to our counties and on and on. It is very important.
Now, as you know, of course, Oregon, out of our, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 representatives in Congress, between senators and congressmen, we have one Republican, good old Greg, over in Eastern Oregon. And so, obviously, we'd like to add to that mix just a little bit. Would you say that then truly Oregon is not fairly represented?
Well, I would have to agree with that. Although Greg's district is the only one that is dominant Republican, for it to be the end result that you say, 1 out of 7 in the state to be a Republican is what's not represented. For example, in congressional district number 5, we have a proportion of when you look at only Republicans and Democrats, a 52% Democrat compared to 48% Republican. So, see, that 1 out of 7 is not representative. No. Yeah. No. So I look at it in terms of the total population, and we Republicans need to work really hard this year, this election cycle, because we know that the Democrats are vulnerable.
Well, I was going to say, I've spoken with NRCC people, and I believe the last I heard, and this was maybe a month or a half or 2 ago, was that the 5th Congressional District of Oregon was number 6 or number 7 out of 8 targeted swing districts in the entire United States. In other words, it's one they think, we might be able to flip this one.
I agree, and I applaud them for thinking that. I happen to believe they're right.
Yeah, I think it's ripe for that. Kurt Schrader has voted lockstep and barrel with President Obama, and he's now, of course, trying to show that he's a blue dog Democrat and all that again. But I think if you just continue to pound away at what he has done, which is not much for Oregon, I think you'll have a good chance.
I do too, and he's even done some things that make, to me, absolutely no sense relative to the Congressional District Number 5, his neighbors. For example, for several months, he was the sponsor of a bill that would have really jeopardized our wineries here. We've got, over 130 wineries in this area, and my goodness, to tell them we're going to have a federal regulation so that you can't market on the internet would have taken away a huge percentage of many of those companies' revenues. It makes absolutely no sense. And after he thought about it for several months and was talked to by a lot of people, he withdrew his support for that. So, yeah, I'm with you whether you're looking on the national scale or the Congressional District Number 5 scale. What he's doing now in terms of the way he's voting and the bill that he has sponsored makes no sense.
Yeah, that was one of our favorite he stepped in it moments.
Yeah.
And he did. He stepped in it. Again, Karen Bowerman running for the 5th Congressional District. Let me ask you this, just because I think people are just kind of getting to know you as you start to getting the name recognition and you're obviously traveling around the district. A lot of people. One thing. This just came out recently. If you look at Marion County, which is a huge chunk of the 5th District, Republicans actually outnumber Democrats by a small margin, but they do outnumber, independents still being a pretty good chunk. So speaking right here to Marion County, one of the things, this is probably the most conservative of all of the parts of the district. People here are both fiscally and socially conservative. Some have one, they think one's a little more than the other. Some think it's equal. Where would you say you stand on that?
On the fiscal side, there is a complete conservative approach. With regard to some of the social issues, I have a little bit different tack in terms of how I approach them. Which ones would you like me to talk about? And I'll address that.
Well, there's, of course, all the hot buttons everybody wants to know. But normally I don't really talk too much about it when it comes to a state representative. But if you're going to be in Congress, and eventually there are many that would like to see the U.S. Congress maybe, again, step into Roe v. Wade. I don't know. I hear that a lot. So where do you stand on life, on the Death with Dignity in Oregon Act, on some of those controversial issues that come up in Oregon?
Yeah, let me take the right to life and abortion first. We have to follow the law. It's my opinion then, and it is the Hyde Amendment, that no federal tax dollars would be used to pay for abortion, except in the unusual cases of saving a mother's life and so on. And that's precisely where I stand. That's where the law stands right now. As a U.S. rep, I'd probably never really have a vote one way or another, except on funding. We don't have anything to say about the Supreme Court justice, and who would be able to vote for them would be our senators. So when we look at the funding aspects that the House is involved in, I do not support federal tax dollars being used to pay for abortion.
Okay. And there's, like I said, there's a bazillion hot button issues that we could touch on. I think one more thing that people really want to know is, would you vote to repeal Obamacare?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that direct enough?
That's direct enough.
I would indeed.
Okay.
And I think it's important that we are prepared as a country for if Obamacare is declared unconstitutional, even if parts of it or all of it are declared unconstitutional. And that's where I think it's important that we have a plan and a base for talking about, okay, then where do we go in place?
Sure.
And that's a whole other program, but I'd love to talk to you about that sometime, because it's not all that complicated. We can make sense out of this and take care of it.
All right. I'll tell you what, I'm totally up against the clock, and I will talk some more before May 15th, of course, and feel free to just drop me a line whenever you want to get on and chat for a little bit. Tell everybody where's the best way to get a hold of you, website, the email, whatever it might be.
www.kbowman, KarenBowerman.com, and that's Karen, Karen, and Bowerman, the Bowerman that we know in Oregon, the one that we know for his track and his Nike, Bowerman.
Okay, so KarenBowerman.com, period, just like that.
That's it.
Okay, sounds good.
And there you'll find all my contact information.
Awesome. All right, Karen, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
You bet. All right, and there you go. Karen Bowerman running for Congress as a Republican here in the 5th Congressional District.